welcome to Up Close with Carlos Sang, celebrating art, entertainment, and the human spirit. Welcome to another episode of Up Close with Carlos Sang. My next guest is one of my favourite actors to arrive on the London theatre scene. He is currently starring in The Cherry Orchard at the Donmar Warehouse, following an incredible run in the title role of Teenage Dick back in 2019 and 2020. He has also previously been seen in The Normal Heart and The Seagull. It's a huge delight to be able to introduce the wonderful Daniel Monks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you obviously made your London debut in Teenage Dick at the start of Michael Longhurst's tenure there. How has it been, getting to go back to the Donmar Warehouse for the Cherry Orchard, now that we're at the end of Michael Longhurst's reign at the Donmar?
It's been an absolute dream. I mean, like, the reason I have any career on stage or screen in the UK is because of the Donmar and because of Michael Longhurst and also the amazing casting director Anna Cooper, who is and was casting director of the Donmar during his tenure. And so it just feels like a beautiful homecoming. I just love it there so much. I had the best time ever doing Teenage Dick, and I'm having the best time ever doing the Cherry Orchard. And it just feels like a place that I kind of just want to, theater I want to continue coming back to for the rest of my career, hopefully, if they'll have me.
Yeah, I mean, the Donmar is such an incredible space. It's this tiny theatre in the heart of the West End, which does so much incredible work. How much did you know about the Donmar, prior to coming to London, and what is it like, having the audience so close to you?
I knew snippets. I knew that Nicole Kidman had her West End debut in the Blue Room there and stuff like that, fellow Australian. I'd heard of the name and stuff, but obviously, being in Australia and working in Australia, I hadn't, seen any London theatre really. And so moving here, I obviously saw more and just, yeah, fell in love with the place. And I mean, part of the reason why I love it so much is how intimate it is. It like, I don't know, for me, theatre as a performer feels the most exciting when there is such a direct connection between you and the audience. And there's something about being in that small of a space that you just feel it so much more. You get the energy back so much more. And it doesn't feel like there's the remove between you and the audience. And I love it.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I was really keen to see the Cherry Orchard was because you're also performing in the round. I was wondering, is it particularly more challenging, already having the audience so close to you, but, literally having the audience wrapped all around you too?
In some elements, it makes it so much easier in terms of like, especially for my character, I speak to the audience quite a bit, and so having them all around me makes it feel easier. But then on like technical elements, like vocally, it's more maybe demanding than it would usually be at the Donmar because you always have your back to someone, and so you have to just be like extra conscious of your vocal energy, and especially because in this production there's a lot of the use of music and band, and so yeah, so it's both. It's both. But it also just like kind of adds to the whole experience of it.
Of course. I feel like we're living through a really exciting time where a lot of creatives are taking really bold and brave approaches to classic work. With people like Benedict Andrews and of course Jamie Lloyd being really at the forefront of that. I was wondering, when you've been approaching pieces like The Cherry Orchard or The Seagull, do you feel like you're approaching, really classic pieces of work, or do they feel like new work to you?
I feel like new work to me. I mean, the thing is, like, it wasn't my intention to go from the Seagull to the Cherry Orchard. I obviously love Chekhov, but it wasn't when I decided, it wasn't like a career plan to do all the Chekhovs. I joke that I must just have like a depressed Russian face or something that screams out for it because I keep getting cast in the Chekhovs. But for me, in both scenarios, the thing that most drew me to them and made me want to do them was Jamie Lloyd and Benedict Andrews. It was the directors and their visions. And like both directors who, in different ways and in also lots of similar ways, have very distinctive visions, who are both very keen on experimentation of form and exploration. I feel like if these were more traditional productions and traditional adaptations or translations of Chekhov, I don't think I would be as excited to do them. For me, it was really so much the directors were the kind of the draw for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you say that as well because one of my friends, she was like talking about how much you look like Anton Chekhov.
Yes.
And she was like saying to me, like when we went to see the Cherry Orchard,
Yeah.
that scene, when Nina's like pointing out about your beard, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we were like wondering, like, was that like deliberate? Was that supposed to be like an in joke? Or
Yeah, I mean, so that was in the script, and so then when I met with Benedict in December last year about the role, I did kind of think like, oh, that's fine because my natural facial hair pattern is just like embarrassing. And so like I took like 3 months to grow what I have now. But even still, like the kind of the unintentional goatee because the sides are only just wispy bits was just kind of helped the joke in a way that yeah, it was just kismet.
Yeah, I mean Chekhov is like, obviously one of the most like performed playwrights in the
Yeah.
world, and for good reason too. Like, were you fairly familiar with his work as well? And
Yeah.
how's it been, approaching these?
I would say I was very, when I did the Seagull, I was very familiar with the Seagull. I'd
Yeah.
seen maybe like 4 productions before, and even in like classes and stuff, done, had worked on Konstantin before, so I knew that a lot. But what's been great with Cherry Orchard, I'd never seen the Cherry Orchard before, and I'd read it before, but like a long time ago. And so, in a great way, I didn't have the baggage of having memory of like other performances that and other interpretations of the text. Like I could kind of just take the text as a new work and at face value. And so that was, yeah, kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, of course. How did that experience, then doing the Seagull, then sort of like inform your approach to doing the Cherry Orchard?
I think what found with the Seagull and stuff is like his writing is, well, for me, when I would first read them, especially when I was like, much younger and before I actually worked on them, I would always think like, oh, these are great, but I don't understand necessarily why these are these like masterworks or considered to be as masterworks. And then working on the text, like, and getting it in your bones and experiencing it, like I so understand it now. And for me, his work is so much like drama as poetry, and
Yeah.
it like there's so many things about his work that isn't, maybe the traditional, very economic, um, plot driven, action based work. There is a lot more musing in it, and there is a lot more, um, you know, room for poetry, basically. And that, if anything, for me, is what makes the experience of doing them so profound and why I have loved doing them so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched the Seagull recently on
Yeah.
NT at home, and it
Yeah.
kind of like made me wish I got to see it,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
person. Do you remember, what it was like, having the NT live cameras in the theater?
Yeah.
Did that sort of like change the performance at all? Having to play to the audience in the building as well
Yeah.
as to the cameras too.
Not really for that one. I mean, I feel like maybe with a different production, it might have felt more jarring, but because Jamie and what Jamie was exploring so much is like trying to create a close up in theater using sound design and using microphones and performance style and really experimenting with that. We, there was already such an exploration of restraint and focus and intensity within performance, and so which kind of just translated really well to cameras anyway. So I didn't have to adjust anything, and I guess what I love so much about theater is the ephemeral nature of it and the fact that like each performance only exists in the memories of the people who have seen it. And so there was I don't love the added pressure of like, oh, but this one is the one that's going to be captured and live on forever. But it was still like a great privilege. And also like, I first really learned about the National Theatre from watching National Theatre Lives in Sydney, years before I ever came to London. And so the the fact that it makes these productions and these works much more accessible is a great thing.
Yeah, have you had the chance to watch that recording back yourself at all?
No, I since 2020 I haven't watched any of my stuff back at all. Like stage or screen. So no, but I've seen the trailer though and it looks great.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the next lockdown.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the Seagull, it felt so different to your previous work, very different to
Yeah.
Teenage Dick,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
different to The Normal Heart as well. I felt so drawn to your content. It was there was that stillness to him and that deep melancholy as well. What was it that drew you to this character, and how was it getting to play this
Yeah.
iconic part?
I mean, that one in particular, in the most like creatively fulfilling way, felt like such a collaboration between me and the director, Jamie Lloyd. Like it really felt like we were on like an exploration together and that he was so with me in it. And and I think I don't know, like I often am drawn to very emotionally meaty roles, I guess because I have gone through, you know, the adage I say or whatever is that I've experienced hell and I've lived through it and come back. And so I'm also interested a lot in my work of like not only portraying, the this is getting existential, but like the pain, the hell of existence accurately, but also showing, I'm not articulating this well, but like basically I've been to hell and back. So that feels like a story that I'm capable and want to tell well. Also because it's not always told, I feel like as honestly, and it's a really important journey to tell in art.
Mm.
but that was very rambly.
Yeah, I mean, it really was a gorgeous production of the Seagull and very much in that Jamie Lloyd house style. I was also wondering, on top of that collaboration with the director, what were those conversations like with Indira Varma and Emilia Clarke on how to construct those relationships that Konstantin had too?
So much of that process was so organic in a beautiful way as well, because we were doing it in 2020, and then our fifth preview got shut down because of COVID.
Yeah.
So we were like 4 nights away from press night back in 2020, March 16th or whatever it was. And so we shut down, and then it took 805 days between us shutting down and starting rehearsals again, and without knowing with any certainty whether it would ever come back. And like during that time as well, I mean, it was kind of living, COVID in general, but us having all gone through that together is kind of a bit of a Chekhovian existence in itself,
Yeah.
in terms of like, especially in the Seagull, like the melancholy and the purgatory of it. And I remember as well, like, for a year, maybe even over a year, every single day when I was like back in Australia and Indira was in LA or something filming something during the COVID time, we would play Words with Friends every single day.
Wow.
And there was this kind of thing of like, we almost had this like weird, like durational rehearsal period unintentionally, where by the time we had press night in 2022, we'd all lived through shit together, like truly in different ways and similar ways to these characters had. And so I think it really just did inform like the depth of the relationships and stuff like that.
How much did the show change from 2020 to 2022 too?
Like quite a bit. But what I would say though is like Jamie was experimenting with something in 2020 that when we came back to in 2022, he kind of had the time to, I don't know, muse on it more and the courage to take it even further. So
Hmm.
like, so the stripped backness of it, it wasn't as stripped back in 2020,
Mm.
but I think Jamie was heading in that direction anyway. And so it kind of just, the one in 2022 felt even more so what he really wanted to do the entire time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I wanted to talk about the Normal Heart as well
Yes.
because it was such a beautiful piece of
Mhm.
drama. Yeah, and I remember feeling like really emotional, like going back into the Olivier after so long as
Mm.
well. How did you sort of begin to get involved in that, after that,
Yeah.
that period of lockdown too?
Yeah. I mean, I was back in Australia, desperate to come back to London, but kind of trapped in Australia. And I did a Zoom audition with Dominic Cook
Yeah.
and Alistair Kumar. And yeah, and then that's kind of what helped me be able to bridge the gap back to the UK and get out of Sydney lockdown. So I was very grateful. And it was just the best experience. It was also like one getting back into a theater, but also like doing a play that meant so much to all of us. Like it was like a predominantly queer room, both on stage and off. And so it just felt like there was such deep-rooted personal investment in this story and telling the story well. And yeah, it was a really beautiful, meaningful experience.
Yeah. How hard was it getting out of Australia, by the way? Because obviously they were like notorious with the
Yeah.
lockdown.
Well, it was a kind of thing of like they were quite okay with me leaving, but then it was like you can't come back. Do you know what I mean? It was those kind of vibes. It was like it was lockdown, so it was like as long as you don't bring anything back in and stuff. But no, I went back after Seagull. I went back for what I thought was going to be 3 months, and it ended up being 17 months. And part of the reasons why I maybe could have gone back earlier, but also I needed work lined up because I wouldn't be able to survive in London without it. And so yeah, so Normal Heart was the joyous job that brought me back to London for good.
Yeah, it was such a poignant piece of work and it felt so relevant with everything that was going on at the time. Did you feel like you were putting on, an important piece of theatre that wasn't just there to entertain people too?
Yeah, totally. And especially like in our production in particular, having the incredible Liz Carr
Yeah.
play Dr. Emma Bruckner, which had never really been done before. And like this is based on a real doctor and such like a disabled hero. And the fact that, you know, we had someone who I looked up to not only in terms of, in this industry, but also in terms of, the disability rights movement as Liz Carr playing that role. It was just really meaningful and stuff. And like there were challenges to production as well because that was like very peak COVID. So we were all socially distancing from each other at all times. Like literally, it was such an emotionally heavy piece, but I didn't hug Ben Daniels until closing night. And so we were both such a community collective, but we were necessarily isolated from each other. We all had to have separate dressing rooms, like we all had to be masked, and so like it was this kind of strange thing. But it was also felt really, especially doing a play about a health crisis, really important to honor that. And miraculously, during that time, we didn't have one COVID case amongst the entire cast, and so like so it definitely paid off. But yeah, it was, I mean, it was surreal. We were telling the story about a health crisis while living through a health crisis.
Yeah, it was really incredible. It felt very apropos,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I remember really vividly watching you just like disappear into the role of Mickey. I just felt like Daniel Monk's just like disappeared, and I felt so connected to your character as well, and especially like towards the end when he realizes that he has to change his position. Did you relate to Mickey at all as well?
Mm.
And yeah, how did you begin to prepare to play that character?
Totally. I mean, it's so funny because like he's an activist in that the character I'm playing in the Cherry Orchard is essentially an
Yeah.
activist as well. And I did a Netflix thing that's coming out later this year where I also played like a revolutionary. And so I feel like I'm in my activist era. And but something about that I really loved about Mickey within this story that's so much about activism and the politics of activism and the internal workings of activist groups and stuff. What I really loved is like Mickey's position was so much of like, yes, we need to fight so hard to save people, but we also have to show care and love for each other and ourselves while doing so. And and that like it can't just be we can't just scream people into, rescuing them. Like there needs to be some sort of balance. And like I don't know, like I'm not articulating that well, but it was a very felt sense that I had that felt I was really happy to be, especially in that big speech. Um, kind of be that voice that pushes back against Ben Daniels' Ned, who was based on Larry Kramer, and and yeah, it felt really. I don't know, the whole thing felt really meaningful.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way from the audience perspective as well. And I think the show was a real representation of true diversity in theatre. Like there were people from all backgrounds in the show. Do you feel like that gap between those from majority backgrounds and those from minority backgrounds is closing at all, or do you think there is still some way to go?
Feel like there's a way to go. I mean, what I would say is I came from Australia, and Australia is a good decade behind the UK. So when I first came to London, I was like, I'm living in kind of the future and this utopia. But there's a way to go, especially when it comes to disability. Um, yeah, but we keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, of course. I did want to ask you a bit about because obviously you were in Teenage Dick and you
Yeah.
played the title role. Michelle Tarry, of course, is now taking on that role
Yeah.
in Shakespeare's Play. Very controversial, and I want to just like gather your thoughts on that too.
Yeah. It's a really complicated issue. What I would say is I feel like I completely understand and kind of stand with the disabled community's response to the casting. But I feel like as well, like this has also been off the back of during the COVID in 2020, there was a whole online campaign called hashtag We Shall Not Be Erased, where the disabled theatre community was really worried that post-COVID we would be all the progress that had been made would regress and that we wouldn't, the places that had been fought so hard to carve out for ourselves in this industry would be taken for us, especially, post-pandemic and stuff. And I think what's been hard is that's kind of come true. And in the year leading up to Michelle Terry's announcement as playing that role, there were so many prominent London and throughout UK theatres that were casting non-disabled actors in disabled roles, and many that like I don't know, I feel like the community just kind of let slide because we were like, you know, we're tired of fighting, and then that the to have a role like the one disabled role in the theatrical canon, Richard III, which had been only very recently finally reclaimed by the disabled community, having it be played by a non-disabled actor, and then the response to that of just like, well, we'll just remove the disability from the text. It just kind of was really disheartening, I think. I think if anything, I was just like I was really sad that like the fears that we had of regression when it comes to disabled inclusion within the theatre industry had kind of come true. And this is also just a bigger industry-wide issue than just Michelle Terry and the Globe, obviously. And I hope that the disabled community's response to that will discourage from similar decisions like that being made by other theatre companies and other artistic directors in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like it's still an exciting time though for disabled actors. You know, you've got people like on the scene like Lizzie
Yeah,
and Francesca Mills. Amy Trigg won her
yeah,
Olivier recently.
totally.
Do you think it's a good time to be in the industry, you know, for disabled actors?
I don't know. I guess it's like you celebrate the wins, but also just be aware of how far you have to go. Like those wins are huge. And then also, like Liz Carr won the Olivier for The
Yeah.
Purple Heart as well. And so it's extraordinary. But it is also very, very far from equal. And so we just keep fighting the good fight. Maybe this is why I keep getting cast as activist roles.
Yeah, of course. I suppose like on the gay scene, you know, there's still
Mm,
definitely you know, a wide range of gay stories being told in the theatre, which I think
totally.
is definitely a positive. And I think, you know, it's great to see, you know, just a wide range of stories being told and not just ones that are about AIDS and, you know,
Yes,
the pandemic.
totally.
But I think, you know, it's still important to have stories, you know, like The Normal Heart and
Yes,
Winters in America being told
yes.
too. How far do you think we've come, you know, since that period? And, you know, how equal do you feel like, you know, gay actors are now in the industry too?
In screen industry, I would say probably n nowhere near as equal as we should be. In theatre, at least London theatre. I mean, but even in Australian theatre, I mean, like, I definitely feel like, especially cis gay white men have, lots of power. A lot of the artist directors, a lot of the people leading are cis gay white men, and this is like an amazing thing. And so it does feel like a very inclusive space for cis gay white people. But what I would say is like the, gender non-conforming or trans artists or not white queer people, I think those people I feel like need more of their stories told and more of their opportunities and to have their experiences and lives kind of centered within our queer theatre making as well in a way that I'm not trying to be really negative. I'm really happy with how everything's come, but I guess I'm just always aware of like what's lacking as you kind of need to keep, moving forward.
Of course. A lot has also been said, you know, in recent years about ticket prices.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, you know, like, are you ever worried at all, you know, that, you know, certain factions of society, you know, might not have access to stories like The Normal Heart or The Cherry
Totally.
Orchard too?
Totally. I mean, like, and also like as an actor, I mean, I don't, I'm not a producer and I don't really know it from the business perspective, but in terms of as a performer, like my favorite performances of doing the Seagull and my favorite one so far of doing the Cherry Orchard has been in the Seagull. They would have many, I think it was like maybe one performance a week or one every 2 weeks, which was all free tickets for community groups that usually wouldn't be able to have access to theatre. And those were always the best shows, hands down the best shows. And similarly at the Donmar. They have the what's called a local performance where they get teenagers within the local community who wouldn't have access to theatre otherwise, and most of them have never seen a play before, and they all get a free ticket to see the show. And that performance not only was the best experience, but like they were just the best audiences. They were so present, so engaged. They had no um cynicism or anything, and it was just like this is I mean, I joke that I was like, I wish all of our audiences were that, but but yeah. So I definitely think the more that there are schemes like that, the better it is for our theatre culture, also for the sustainability of the theatre culture, because these are like the next generations, and so if we want theatre to thrive moving forward, we need to be catering to them as well. Um, and yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was curious as well, you know, growing up in Australia, you know,
Yeah.
how much opportunity did you get as a kid, you know, to go to the theatre as well to see shows yourself too?
Not really. I mean, like I'm from Perth as well, so like not even, the um definitely not a theatre mecca when it comes to Australia. And I feel like I didn't really start seeing plays properly until I'd moved to Sydney.
Mm.
And then even, like going to New York in my early 20s for the first time and, like seeing theatre there. Like I kind of fell in love with acting as an art form through cinema because that was what was accessible and available to
Mm.
me living in the suburbs of Perth, Western Australia. And it was only as an adult that I kind of fell in love with theatre so much. And now it just like, I mean, I want to be in London forever now. And part of that is because like I just don't ever want to live in a city that doesn't have a vibrant theatre available. Because it does feel so. I don't know, as both as performer and as audience, so vital.
Yeah. Have you seen any shows yourself recently that particularly stood out to you? And are
Oh,
there any shows that you'd like to see, after you finish the Cherry Orchard?
yeah, I saw An Enemy of the People that I loved.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved that. I obviously, I mean, like with everyone, I was very fortunate to go to the press night of Jamie Lloyd's Sunset Boulevard, and that was like a night in theatrical history. I was just like electrified having seen that. I just think he's so brilliant. Um, I really wanted when I first came to London and couldn't afford to, see any if many plays, I would go to and this was before NT at home, I would go to the National Theatre and every Tuesday I would book an afternoon slot and watch something on their archive. And the first thing I watched was People, Places and Things because I heard that it was so amazing. And I remember leaving that. It was the first thing I saw like a week after arriving in London, just like walking through, the South Bank, just crying my eyes out having seen that. And so the fact that it's happening right now, I really hope that I can see it once our run's done because I just think Denise Gough is extraordinary, and I would just love to see her on stage in person.
Yeah, it should be a really terrific evening. Are there any creators or actors that you still like to work with as well going forwards?
Oh yeah, I mean so many. I mean it is this thing where it's like that's what's so great about living in London is you get to see so many actors work up close and stuff. I saw at the Bush Theatre and Sleepover Alia O'Doffin last year, and I didn't know who she was, and I was just like so blown away by her, and I'm just like really want to work with her. Anne Marie Duff is another actor who I just think is extraordinary on stage and everywhere. I mean, there are so many. And but also as well, like in terms of directors and stuff, like as a child, all I wanted to do was be an actor, and then when I became disabled at age 11 and kind of gave up that dream because it quote unquote wasn't a feasible career path anymore. And at that time, it really wasn't. Even when I decided to pursue it in my mid 20s, it really wasn't. Um, but in the intervening time between being 11 and my mid 20s, I decided to be a filmmaker, and I went to Australia's National Film School afters, where I specialized in writing and directing, and really fell in love with cinema, and especially I really fell in love with auteur cinema, and I really and I kind of had a sadness that like these films and these worlds and these things that these filmmakers have created, I'd never be able to work with them as being a writer director myself. And when I decided to pursue acting, the greatest joy for me was, oh, I get to now live in their worlds. I get to be part of their mosaics that they're creating. And if anything, that's so much more creatively thrilling for me than creating my own mosaic. And so I feel like in a lot of my choices are director led, and like that's what really excites me. Like with working with the brilliant Benedict Andrews and with Jamie Lloyd and with Michael Longhurst and with Dominic Cook, and like that is really what excites me. So there's like a lot of amazing directors that I love to work with one day.
Yeah. Do you see yourself perhaps going back to writing and directing yourself too in the future?
No, I'm like the one, I feel like most actors run to writing and directing, especially, once they hit 30. I'm the opposite. The more I act, the more I realize this is all I want to do every day of my life. And that for me, writing and directing was kind of like the consolation prize because I thought I couldn't do what I actually really loved. And now I get to do what I really loved. I don't have any desire to write or direct. I just want to play.
Where do you sort of see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Um, Living in London, hopefully yeah, doing more theater with artists that I love, like I'm doing right now. And also hopefully more screen opportunities opening up as well. Um, Not only for me, but for all disabled actors and creatives. And yeah, I mean, it really is a thing where I'm so happy right now. And like so much of this job is about human connection, I guess, with you and the audience, with you and the other actors, with you and the text and the characters and a writer who lived, over a hundred years ago. And because of that, so much of this job it is the people you work with. And currently on the Cherry Orchard, like this company of actors, not only are they all so brilliantly talented, but they're all such incredibly kind, generous people that it's honestly such a joy to come to work here every day. And we have exactly 4 weeks left of this run, and it's like heartbreaking to me because I want to. play and muck around with these beautiful humans every day. And that's, if I can continue to have jobs like this that are creatively fulfilling with beautiful artists that I love for the rest of my career, then I will die very, very happy.
Yeah. Do you ever see yourself even doing the long running shows where you're doing like a year contract, or are you kind of like happy and continue doing these like 3 month runs?
I think more than 3 months probably. I also can't sing, so I don't think I'd ever do a musical. So most plays don't really go. I mean,
The mousetrap.
totally, totally. But no, I feel like 3 months is perfect. Um, yeah, no, and also I just love the variety of it as well. Like I always, I mean, that's the great joy and stress of this job is like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing come October, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing next January, and and so it is the kind of like there's such variety that kind of always can be really stressful, especially if like, when you need certainty, especially like financial security and stuff like that, it can be incredibly stressful. But also is like the great joy because it's like, it's a great adventure of a life.
Yeah, I mean, you played so many incredible characters, since arriving in London. Have any of them particularly stayed with you and made you look at life differently too?
One that I would say even before I came to London, I played my professional theatre debut was playing Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, in
Mm.
Tom Wright's new play, The Real and Imagined History of the Elephant Man, at Malthouse Theatre in Melbourne, directed by Matthew Lutton. And that was such a kind of pivotal, transformative experience playing that character who, through playing him and researching about him and discovering him, became such like a personal hero of mine. And so I definitely feel like Joseph Merrick is a role that kind of will always stay with me.
Yeah.
Um, and Richard III, like obviously I did Teenage Dick, but I would
Mm.
definitely love to um one day revisit him, but in Shakespeare's version as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that actually. I think
Thanks.
that'll be a great production. Yeah, just as a last question, how would you finish this sentence? Daniel Monks is.
Oh. Immediately what came to mind was an actor, which sounds maybe sounds anticlimactic, but for someone who from age 11 to 25 had given up that title and had buried that dream for so long, it feels really empowering as a disabled person to be able to call myself that. And, on my tax forms, call myself that because that's how I make a living, which is a rarity for disabled people. So, yeah, Daniel Monks is an actor.
Daniel Monks, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.